Assalamu alaikum, you're watching Views in News and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about a very important development, and that is about the Pak-US relations. The National Security Advisor of Pakistan, Dr. Moeed, was in the United States and he met his counterpart as well, and we'll be telling you about that detail as well in our today's program. So let's start off from today's agenda. Pakistan and the United States of America National Security Advisors met in Geneva, Switzerland. The meeting between Pakistani National Security Advisor Dr. Moeed Yusuf and his American counterpart Jake Sullivan is the first in the personal capacity at a very high level, and between the two countries since the Biden administration assumed office in January. The second area we'll be talking about is when Dr. Moeed Yusuf tweeted and said that we are pleased to meet the U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. Pakistan and the U.S. delegations held positive discussions on bilateral, regional and global issues of mutual interest. Both sides agreed to continue the conversation towards advanced cooperation in Pak-US bilateral relations. And Ministry of Foreign Affairs further added that there is no U.S. military or air base in Pakistan, nor was any such proposal envisaged. Any speculation on this account is baseless, irresponsible and should be avoided. Pakistan and the U.S. have a framework of cooperation in terms of airlines of communication and ground lines of communication in place since year 2001. No new agreement has been made in this regard. So these are the major areas. Obviously, it comes to Pak-US. Obviously, it is more important that we should also keep an eye on what's going on in Afghanistan, the development regarding that. And as we all know that the U.S. forces are ready to vacate this region by 9/11. So that is also a very major development. So to talk about this, let me quickly introduce you to our panelists. We have with us in our studio on my right is Dr. Nazir Mahmood Saab, senior columnist, writer and an analyst. Thank you so much, sir, for your time. And on Skype, we have with us Lieutenant General retired Naeem Khalid Lodi Saab, former Defense Minister, former Defense Secretary. Thank you so much, sir, for your time.
It's a pleasure.
And from United States of America, we have with us Syed Muhammad Ali. He's an expert on foreign affairs. Syed Muhammad Ali, thank you so much for your time, sir. Thank you. Let me start off from you, sir, and the latest development. I mean, there was a lot of debate going on in the Pakistani media that Pakistan most likely is going to give them some bases. Now, once we talk about the agreement that was signed in year 2001 when Musharraf was in power, that was the time when the American troops invaded Afghanistan. Now the point is, sir, what is the current status of that agreement? And having said that, sir, now there are rumors that Pakistan might give them certain bases in the region. So what sort of options do we have? I mean, let's start off from there.
Well, your first question about the status of that agreement, the official version is that that agreement was signed in 2001 and probably that agreement was not time bound. That means there was no expiry date.
Till the American forces leave?
Apparently, otherwise our government would not have quoted that time of 2001. So if the version is that that agreement is already there in force from 2001, that means it was not time bound, it is open ended. So if it is open ended, then according to that agreement, we are bound to provide, as you mentioned, airlines of communication.
The logistics, basically.
Logistics, basically. So this is one. So the status probably, if we believe the government version, and which is I have no reason to doubt that, because if that agreement is in place and if it is not time bound, probably that agreement is still in force. So probably the government is right in asserting that there is no new agreement.
Correct.
But having said that, what are the prospects and why this discussion has suddenly re-emerged now? For the past probably 8 to 10 years, though the agreement was in force, but America was not as effectively utilizing those lines as it used in the first 10 years of this century. That means from 2001 to 2010 or 11. But as gradually the time changed, probably the use of those lines, airlines and ground lines, reduced. But now, since America has to withdraw and they have a solid commitment, they have announced, Joe Biden administration has also announced that we will withdraw no matter what. So initially they tried to negotiate with Tajikistan or Kyrgyzstan, because if you remember, just yesterday there was another statement by Russian envoy for Afghanistan. He said that Tajikistan and Uzbekistan have refused to allow use of their space and ground facilities after the withdrawal. So that's why America was in a fix, and that's why this discussion re-emerged, and that is one of the reasons why our
obviously
national security
those states, the middle, that mid part, when we talk about the Central Asian side, I'm sure so they're under a lot of influence of the Russians even now.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
Yeah.
So though having said that, in the past they had allowed
And
the
that
use
region
of
is also called the softer belly of USSR. So the softer belly of Russia, as we say,
Yes.
I mean, they wouldn't like the Americans to be anywhere around. But sir, let's take the same debate and the same question to General Lodi. General Lodi, your take on this part, sir. I'm sure you have more to share with us.
Thank you very much. The first thing is, whenever any agreement is open-ended, it has one advantage and one disadvantage. The disadvantage is that it can keep carrying forever, and the advantage is you can renegotiate it at any time because it is not time-bound, so you are not bound by it forever. So I know, for one, that this agreement was revised in 2011-12. That is after 10 years of its inception. And I think the review will be due in this year, somewhere in November. So,
General Saab, if I may intervene, was it time bound that after 10 years it is going to be reviewed, or because of this Salala incident, or perhaps because of Osama bin Laden incident, or Raymond Davis incident that was reviewed, sir?
It is a provision that whenever the both sides want, they can always review this, agreement. It is written there. I've seen that agreement, and we have a separate agreement with US and separate with NATO. There are two separate agreements, and my understanding is that they are renewable every 10 years because things so much changes, so many changes take place that this thing can happen. So one thing is for sure, no basis. The second thing is for sure. For the time being, the air logs and the ground logs are there, and but in my assessment, now this is assessment, not knowledge, these will continue till September this year, and then there will be a review, and then actually the real decision will be taken, which we are talking today. Because you see, once we say that we have no favorites in Afghanistan, that means that we will not allow any one faction of Afghanistan to be helped by somebody from outside through our corridors, and the other not being helped. So either the Afghan Taliban will have to be on board, and others, as far as these, this aid to Ashraf Ghani's government, because that is what I understand, that if Americans want these G-locks and A-locks, that must be to support the government in the existing government initially, and then later on, of course, whatever dispensation comes. And for that, I think the main stakeholders, which goes without doubt, would be the Afghan Taliban. They have to agree to that. So it is Pakistan's prerogative and thinking, and whether they would like to antagonize any big faction within Afghanistan, or they would like to remain neutral. Once we say that we have no favorites, that means we are not going to help anyone. And we also say that it should be Afghan owned and Afghan led, whatever is the final decision and agreement.
Correct.
So we leave it to them. But actually, practically speaking, in my opinion, and I may express it, I've been expressing it in your program a number of times, Americans and their allies, including India, do not want peace in Afghanistan. And I keep on saying that, and I have a number of arguments in its support. And I can just list the arguments without giving the arguments: China, Russia, CPAC, Iran, Pakistan.
There are multiple reasons.
These are the reasons. So if there's a peace in Afghanistan, the Chinese will have more influence there. The Russians will start, using this route, CPEC route, and you cannot have an eye on the whatever Iranians are doing. What although they have other means of doing that, I understand that. So let us keep our fingers crossed, and we'll have to wait. I think let us not jump to conclusions. I would say that it is not very well known so far that what is the understanding between US and Pakistan. The coming weeks will unfold that situation.
All right, sir. Now, moving on to you, Saeed Muhammad Ali. Now, obviously, Jan Saab has mentioned about multiple reasons for the Americans to sort of engage or remain engaged here. So, if you look at Iran, Pakistan, Pakistan's nuclear system, Chinese, CPEC, OBOR, let's put it this way, CPEC is just one part of it. The Russians on top, and the Americans have been very categorical, very straight when it comes to two major adversaries, and they have named China and they have named Russia. So why to stay away? 20 years of investment. First of all, do you think there is going to be some sort of a trouble for the regional players if the Americans delay, or perhaps there could be some sort of a change, or if Pakistan supports them or facilitates them as far as the ground logistics or air logistics are concerned? Do you think it is going to put pressure on Pakistan from the other allies for that matter?
Well, I mean, there are two ways of viewing this situation. I mean, it is interesting that, there is this broader sort of great game, if you will, and now the players are, again, Russia and China. But whether there is, that the chaos that can potentially descend on Afghanistan will serve to perpetuate Chinese and Russian interests is also a question which is up in the air. Because if we look at China's position over these past 2 decades, America has tried several times to try and make China bear some more responsibility on the ground. But China has, while it was very cautious and particularly with the Xinjiang problem, that being aggravated by militants from Afghanistan, and that's one of the reasons why it otherwise has a very non-interfering foreign policy and does interact with countries based on its own realpolitik calculus. But in the case of the intervention in Afghanistan, China has not pushed back against that. However, it has not also taken a lot of responsibility. And as things stand, there are two options for China. So either it continues its engagement with Pakistan and has an arrangement also with the Taliban if they hold sway within a chaotic situation to ensure its own sort of resource extraction interest, because if Afghanistan is sitting on $1 trillion of natural resources, there is that sort of energy, the desire to sort of secure those energy corridors. And on the flip side, if there's a possibility, because I think America also realizes or should realize that there's only so much that it can do in the region once it exists. And that, I think that there is this realization, and it could turn to American indifference, but if it wants to remain engaged with the region, India is not the only player that it needs to play ball with. And simultaneously, the Biden administration is trying to make overtures with Iran. Afghanistan, like Pakistan, need not be an arena of great power competition. But there are a lot of ifs and buts associated with that, right? And so it's also simultaneously trying to weigh its options. So fine, if Tajikistan and Uzbekistan do not provide the bases, there's also Gulf partners, right? There's Qatar, there's Oman. So everyone has like a deck of cards in their hands and are doing this wait and see approach. But I think at the end of it, I mean, as far as Pakistan also goes, we have particular preferences in terms of the power sharing formula that emerges in Afghanistan in the future. But certainly chaos is not a desirable option also for Pakistan. So
True,
there is
absolutely.
enough commonality while everyone has their own particular preferences and national interests, that there is some ground.
So,
I
Ali,
mean,
the
it's not to say
probability
that it's
of this
easy to
particular
achieve.
area, I mean, it seems that the situation out there is going to remain fluid, the way it is, the way it was. But there's going to be a center for proxy even after the vacation of these countries like America or NATO members, perhaps.
Well, I mean, we have to see right now. I mean, the biggest challenge is to see, what kind of a power sharing phenomena can emerge, because the situation on the ground is quite murky. I mean,
Exactly,
both the
that's what my point
Taliban
is.
and the Afghan government, control an equal number of districts, and the rest are contested. And it's possible that the Taliban could take them over. And would it be willing to, enter into a power sharing formula, and what would be the emerging contours of any semblance
I
of
think that
government?
that's a million dollar question, I guess. Now, another very important part, Nazir Saab, is the situation in certain areas. For example, Chechnya has been an issue and it could be ignited any time. Then you have problems in the certain western provinces of China, where the Muslim population is. And many do not know exactly what the current status is. And then on top, sir, it is believed that this presence of ISIS or various other factions, whether they are splinter groups of the Taliban, or is it TTP or Hizbul Ahrar, or Sharia group for that matter, there is a probability that if these certain groups, non-state actors, are being funded properly, they are guided, they are assigned tasks, they could create a problem in the other regional countries as well. On the basis of religion, perhaps, and Pakistan and Iran, I mean, obviously they will feel the heat of it. Do you believe that the Americans, as General Saab said, that they don't want this area to be, all sorted out and all clear of all the hindrances, all the problems, all the kind of issues that are prevailing? Because if they grow, if there is economic prosperity, I mean, what's the point? Obviously, when they have their two major adversaries there. Now the role of India comes in. And there was this very interesting article, Will India Balance China and Asia? The US can only hope.
Well, this concern that Taliban and other militant groups can create more problems is a major concern for me also. I mean,
Sir, Taliban, they have a goal which is within the borders of Afghanistan. They do not have any other ideology beyond the way IS has, for that matter.
Well, I have a difference of opinion here, because many people think that Afghan Taliban should be supported and promoted, as they have legitimate right to have share in power in Afghanistan. But I see Afghan, all these groups are militants. The level of militancy is different. The area of operation is different. But essentially, be it Afghan Taliban, Pakistan Taliban, IS, Islamic State, or Hizb ut-Tahrir, or whatever, their essential agenda is the same. And that is the use of militancy to capture power and to establish their own version of a theocratic state that they want to establish. So I don't see much difference between these groups. They have very many commonalities between them, and that is the concern. If peace is destabilized in that region further, then after American withdrawal, there is a chance that these militant groups become more active. And that's why I see, Pakistan allowing United States to use airlines and ground lines. I fear that there may be, because, if you remember 2001, General Musharraf's period, initially Pakistan supported America, and initially everything was, appearing that Taliban are finished. But after a few years, we realized that Pakistan itself became a target. how many thousands we have lost, civilian and
Especially after 4 or 5 years, 2006 onwards.
yes,
Let's put it this
and
way.
that so-called war on terror went on and on and on, and essentially these were us, Pakistani soldiers and Pakistani civilians who suffered, right? So that's what I fear, that there
But
is a
this
chance.
time we are letting them out. We are helping the similar cause. Taliban want them out, and we are helping them get out of the region, sir.
Yes, but again, if they start using Pakistani air and ground space.
What other options do they have, sir? That is another question. Okay, anyway, you may
Yes.
continue, because this question again is going to be pretty
Yes.
tricky, the
So
one
that's
which
why
I have
think,
in my mind.
there so Pakistan needs to tread very carefully, because there is a chance of increasing
What
militancy.
option do we have?
Well, option, I
is
don't
it a
think that-
checkmate situation, sir?
I don't think that Pakistan
We
should
support
allow.
them, we are in trouble. We don't support them, we are in trouble. What should we do?
Then probably
you have an agreement
rather
there.
than providing base, now the basis Pakistan is saying the bases are not there, but still we are ready to provide air and ground facilities to them, right? Now, if we do, first of all, it is also disputed whether, as opposition in Pakistan is claiming that there might be bases, because if we remember General Ayub Khan's time, General Ayub Khan kept refusing. He did not announce that
The
Badaber
Badaber,
was being
yeah.
used, but the base was used, and that antagonized Soviet Union. Then during General Ziaul-Haq's time also, we served American purposes. Pakistan, was used and we suffered. General Pervez Musharraf time, again, Pakistan was used and we suffered. So that's why I fear.
Richard Armitage never gave you any option. He had put certain, I think there was 7 or 11-point agenda,
Well,
and you accepted all.
Turkey refused. Turkey refused. Turkey said that no, we don't allow the use of our space
They
or
went
ground.
into their parliament, I remember. That's how the decision was taken.
Yes. So, essentially, Pakistan needs to be very careful. This is a dangerous game. We want peace in Afghanistan. And I don't agree with General Saab that America also does not want peace there. If they did not want, probably they could have stayed there. Since they are withdrawing,
But they
want a solution.
They were
there.
under a lot of pressure
Yes,
to
but
leave
I think that
and to
that
quit. And
Biden-
because of this COVID, sir, just look at the amount of money they have spent on their system to run.
I think that
over $2 trillion.
I think Biden administration is sincere in restoring peace. Otherwise, they would not have participated in conference in Moscow. They have given concessions, and they do want. But it depends on essentially Taliban and other militant groups whether they are agreeing to renounce violence and militancy and agree to take some share of power rather than trying to occupy Kabul and establishing a theocratic government in Kabul. That will not be accepted to anyone. That is the main issue.
Now, General Saab, coming to you, sir, let's suppose that the Pakistani government says, well, no more logistic support for the Americans because this is going to go against our interest as far as Afghanistan is concerned, or whatever other issue we have. I was just thinking, sir, if the Americans, they really want to keep their presence, do you think, sir, Jammu Kashmir, the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, could be an option for you, sir, for the Americans to have a certain number of perhaps NATO forces or the American forces there, as long as there is peace in Afghanistan, for whatever issue. That would be great for them, sir, despite that the Chinese would put them under pressure, because under a certain act, sir, the Americans can use the Indian bases, the Indians can use the American bases, and they have that in agreement, sir.
You are right, they have that option and they also have that logistic agreement, as you are saying.
Yeah.
But my dear friend, on the other side is India, which is not as malleable as Pakistan. And I don't think they will allow any such thing so easily. I mean, I'm not ruling out the possibility, but it is quite possible. But I think even today, Pakistan is a better, objective for them, because we are likely to acquiesce more easily. But let me just stake out 2-3 points. One, as the friend was saying, that we have always suffered whenever we gave bases to America. He quoted Ayub Khan regime and other regimes, even Musharraf regime, Ziaul-Haq. So that is, then the conclusion is very clear. Let us not do it the fourth time. If 3 times we have suffered, why are we even considering it? the fourth time. It should be out. And especially once we are very sure that they are against CPAC, they are against Chinese influence, they are against Russian influence, and they do not have good relations with Iran. So I just leave this argument here. You can think over it. And let me pick up one more point. Saying that all these militant outfits have the same agenda is a very strange statement. I mean, we know very well that Daesh and ISL, they have got a world level, agenda. As far as Tehreek-e-Taliban, Pakistan is concerned, they have a regional agenda and especially Pakistan specific agenda. And they are the ones who were nurtured by RAW, under NDS and amply, supported by CIA. And Afghan Taliban, they fought for their independence. Every time they only wanted the occupation forces to be out. So I would like to listen to that argument that anybody makes, that all these militant organizations have the same agenda. My dear sir, it is very well known they all have very different agendas, and their agendas are very well articulated by them with no inhibitions. So,
I would like to respond to that.
I would like to say one more thing, and then of course, sir, you can say whatever you want to say. If today even we think, and Muhammad Ali was also saying that equal portions of Afghanistan are being influenced by both Afghan Taliban and the Afghan government, which is not a fact. Afghan Taliban's influence is a little more than the government, let us say 60-40 or somewhere. And remember that 40% by the government influence was with the help of US, which is now leaving. So what do you expect? I mean, what is the logic? It is so simple, written on the wall, that in any future dispensation, if there is no external intrusion, Taliban are going to be the main stakeholders in any political setup. I do not know if somebody can give me an argument against that. Taliban are talking to Abdullah, they are talking to engineer Hikmatyar, they are talking to Uzbeks, they are talking to everyone except Ashraf Ghani, because they know that Ashraf Ghani was supporting Americans all along, and America was their number one enemy. So I do not understand as a Pakistani that there is a losing horse, there is a winning horse, and we are debating that which side we should be supporting. And one last thing, that people who are scared of this, they will bring the type of government and Sharia. We have very good relations with Saudi Arabia all along. Have we ever asked what is their system? We have very good relations with China. Have we ever asked what is their political system? So why are we so scared about whatever system they have in their own country? Let them have it, but we must know that who are going to be the main stakeholders, we must side with them. If we side with the weaker side, what will happen is the two sides will become nearly equal, and they will keep on fighting for as long as possible, and that is what the Americans want. If one side is weak, one side is strong, you support the strong side. This is how things happen in Afghanistan. The losing side will lose, and then a grand jirga will be called, and according to the ground situation, the next dispensation will take place. This is so simple and straight. Of course, those who don't want to understand, that is something else.
You want to respond to that, sir?
Of course. Okay. I wish that would be that simple as General Saab explained. There are two important points here that he raised. Why I think that they are the different side of the same coin, because there are two very common things in all these militant groups, whether these are Afghan Taliban, Pakistan Taliban, IS or whoever, or Hizb ut-Tahrir. Essentially they are militant organization. Nobody can dispute that.
Yes.
They are militant organization. Yes. They are using militancy, number one. And number two, all of them want to establish a theocratic state. I have been saying this earlier also, and I will repeat that trying to establish a theocratic state in the 21st century in this region will be not good even for Pakistan. And those who are saying that when Afghan Taliban take over in Kabul, that will be good, they will support Pakistani Taliban, and Pakistani Taliban may once again start militant activities. And I am surprised why even after APS incident, people are still supporting them and saying that nothing will happen. These are militant organizations. They will support each other, and it will be a more disaster for Pakistan. This is not as simple. This is simplistic thinking that has harmed Pakistan so much because we think that what we are thinking, if Taliban take over Kabul, that will be good for us. That will not be good for us. And the example that you give about Saudi Arabia and Taliban,
China.
is not a good example. Why? Because Saudi Arabia, at least to my knowledge, Saudi Arabia has not been supporting militant activities in Pakistan. Taliban have been doing militant activities in Pakistan. So equating these two, and Saudi Arabia have been recognized by all the countries in the world. Taliban government from 96 to 2000, they ruled for 5 years, and there were only 3 countries who recognized the Taliban government, and still we want to establish another Taliban government which will not be recognized by the world, and it will be recognized by Pakistan or I don't know who. Because
Well, do you think, Jain Saab,
even
things that
Saudi
the
Arabia
ground,
will not
the
recognize
Ji,
Taliban
ji,
government there.
ground
So
reality
what
has
my friend
changed
is-
after 20
what
years.
my friend is
This
saying,
is a
I agree
different
with
world.
that.
We are
That
living in
means-
the 20th,
All
20th
right,
century.
all right.
That means that we do not want Afghan to settle the Afghan issue. We would like to stop the Taliban from taking over, and then say so. Then don't say we have no favorites and we would not like to interfere. Then say so that we would like to interfere and we would like to stop Taliban from taking over. Say so then.
Well, if you give me a choice between Mullah Brother and Ashraf Ghani, I will go for Ashraf Ghani.
Okay, then okay. My only
Well,
problem
I mean,
is that
if you
my
want
only
Mullah Brother,
problem-
go ahead. I mean, you just
Faisal-
look at their, if
Faisal,
there is no
my
third
only
choice,
problem
and
is-
if you have Dr.
only
Ashraf
problem
Ghani
is-
and you have Mullah Brother, and if you go for, just like we
my
went for
only
Mullah
problem
Umar,
is, dear Faisal,
you go
that
for
I have dealt with both.
Mullah Brother, so then go for
My
Mullahs
only
then.
problem is that
I
I
mean,
have dealt
that
with
is the
both.
problem with
All right.
us, you know,
Afghan
we go for
Taliban
Mullahs,
and
go for
Taliban
Mullahs then.
Pakistan. So give me that due if you want to. I have dealt with both. Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan and the Afghan Taliban.
That's
I've dealt
what
with them
surprises me.
physically.
That's what
I know
surprises
them much
me.
better, if you allow me to say that.
But anyway,
Okay, I rest my case.
coming to you,
I rest my case.
Sayyid Muhammad Ali now. Let's comment on the same point. Because at the end of the day, the entire region, and in particular, what really bothers me is the sovereignty of my country, is the safety of my own country. And what really
exactly.
bothers me is that
Exactly.
any sort of an organization, a group, a non-state actor right across the border posing a threat to my country should not even exist. Simple as that. But what if there is a civil war-like situation? This is what General Saab forecasts. He believes that there could be a problem like that if the issue is not sorted out properly, and then we all will feel the heat, sir.
Well, I am oscillating between both these positions, and B, I feel that there is an absence of other very important discussions that need to happen simultaneously. So first, let me elaborate on my first point, and that I think is that I agree with Dr. Nisar that the Taliban are also a dark horse, and we might be betting again on a dark horse. And while I also realize that Ashraf Ghani and his position is also has been there's been a lot of animosity with Pakistan, and there will perhaps continue to be. But if there is a possibility of trying to broker, Pakistan might want to revert to the status quo of a pariah Taliban government. One wonders how much they've learned and what they will do within Afghanistan. I think that would have repercussions for the broader region. I mean, Pakistan did it walked a fine line of not allowing a merger between the TTP and the Afghan Taliban in the past, but an assurance to that effect is not guaranteed. If there is a Taliban takeover in Afghanistan, it could encourage our local militant groups. I think that there are interconnections between militant groups, be it the Haqqani and the variety of sort of sectarian groups on this side. So I think that that's a dark horse to bet on entirely. I also think that other groups like Daesh and ISIS, at least the intelligence reporting done in the Western world, suggests that the Taliban do still maintain ties with those groups. So I am not, fully confident in either entirely Ashraf Ghani with close ties with India, with having, very hard positions on the Durrani line and, finger pointing at Pakistan as being the best option, nor the Taliban. And, that is the effort, that if there can be a compromise, if the Taliban have the might, I mean, the US and Western powers, for them, it's a legacy issue. Whether they use drones or counter-terrorism, they will try to continue supporting, right, the Afghan, and there will be, there'll be a greater hue and cry if the Taliban come in and start doing repression again within Afghanistan. So that's one scenario for Pakistan. There's, the chaos. If we, if we have to try and do our best to avert chaos, even if, if we have to compromise on what emerges rather than just betting on A or B, because of the refugee flow, besides all those other issues. And my second point here is that, we also, and these are very complex issues like terrorism, counter-terrorism, and stability. I mean, it's a mouthful. But, alongside this, we need to, as the Americans say, walk and chew gum at the same time, right? And America has, for them, this is their priority. But for us, for the long game, water. So, I mean, with the Kabul River and water scarcity and Kabul inflows into KP, right? And it forms like this S shape, right? So we are upper and lower riparian at the same time. Afghanistan and Pakistan don't even have a water sharing agreement. I mean, we have one with India, right? And coming climate change, where is that discussion? Here, Senator Van Hollen, the guy who had
But Ali, that
started
is
the
only
ROZ
possible
initiative.
when you have a proper legitimate government. I mean, for example, you end up settling an issue with Ashraf Ghani's government, and let's suppose he is no more there in power. So whom to talk
Of
to?
course,
Because,
of
you talk
course.
about Durrani line, you talk about the water issues, you talk about even the Pak-Afghan transit trade. I remember I was interviewing Mr. Dawood, and he was the advisor to the Prime Minister on Commerce, and he said that he's going to go to Afghanistan and sort out issues and with the transit. I mean, there's so much we can do, but prior to that, there has to be peace. Regions grow now,
Of course
sir.
there does. Of course there does. But that's what I mean by approaching these issues simultaneously, because these are the sweeteners, right? If there is a possibility of preferential trade agreements and an ROZ, a reconstruction opportunity zone, that will enable even the Taliban to swallow the bitter pill, right, and compromise rather than
Even the
just
Americans
using
supported the ROZ's formula, yeah. I think ROZ's funding there, investing in that particular side, I think, Ali, would be a great gesture by the Americans, especially these ROZs. When you talk about that, it is going to provide a lot of job opportunity for the people. It is definitely going to uplift the economic situation, and so much more can be done, sir. There could be tax-free regions where people can really, share their ideas, and so much more can be done. But again, question number one, how to bring in peace and what sort of a settlement there would be. So last couple of minutes, that's what I have. Anything, I mean, you have adversaries, you have, ideas which are converging for that matter, sir. Afghanistan is a landlocked city. The history tells us that Pakistan is a very important country for them, no matter what sort of a relationship they had in the past, whether they accepted us right after 1947 or not. Things have changed with Iran. I mean, what I'm saying, our alignment with the West seems to be shifting towards the other side. What I'm saying is at time, and that is something which is brilliant. Nobody knows what is going to happen in the future, but you can still forecast looking at the past and the current experience. Now, the point is, sir, that what suits us should be the priority of any government in Pakistan. Simple as that, sir.
But two priorities.
You believe
One,
that we should not support Taliban, A. And the next is?
well, Taliban, if
Support
they want
means
share,
that you don't want,
if
yeah.
they want share in power, that is one solution. Not dominating the Kabul government, because if what Taliban
Obviously,
want,
there has to be some sort of a settlement. There are Tajiks, there are Uzbeks, there are Pashtuns, there are local.
Taliban should be, for us, probably the option is, if we have any influence on Taliban, we should try to convince them that rather than eliminating the Kabul government at all and occupying it, it is better to have a couple of ministries
Looking
in the
at
government.
the history of Afghanistan, sir, do you think any settlement formula will work?
It has to work.
It has to,
in
but it
Lebanon
might
also
not.
for 15
There
years
is a
civil
huge
war went
probability
on.
it might not.
Sooner or later, peace has to be there. So much blood has been let. So one option is that the Taliban agree to have a couple of ministries in the government and try to solve problems. The problem will not be solved if Taliban want to occupy and have the dominating final hand. The world will not accept this. So the only option I see is that Taliban agree to share in power with a couple of ministries and stop violent actions.
You remember BJP's government shared some ministries with Mehbooba Mufti, and what sort of ministries and what happened later. So it seems that, whatever you give them, at the end of the day, it is
I will say
not
only two things,
as
if you allow.
easy as it seems. Ji, General Saab.
Just two things. I think one is that we should stand by the principal statement that we are giving, that we have no favorites, which means that we are not bothered who comes to power in Afghanistan, because this is what it means, no favorites. If you want to say that we have no favorites and in your heart you don't want Afghan Taliban to come and you want to help the Afghan government, then you are not standing by your principle. That is one. And secondly, my dear, those Afghan Taliban who have shown the door to combined forces of NATO and US, whether I never say that they have been defeated, but whatever they wanted to do here, they have failed in doing that. So do you think what my dear friend is saying, that they should accept two ministries and then let the things happen? It is not going to happen that way, sir. Let us be realistic. They are going to be the main stakeholders. They might give two ministries to Ashraf Ghani and keep the remaining 12 with themselves. And
that seems to be what
but saying that give two to them is being very unrealistic. Anyway, I would suggest that don't interfere. Just stay back. Don't allow anyone else to interfere from your land. Thank you.
All right. Sayyid Muhammad Ali.
So I would still maintain that yes, peace needs to prevail, but alongside peace, we need to create the enabling conditions for peace, and Pakistan needs to be proactive in that regard. I think the NSA, when the counterparts met, I think the framing is right, and we are trying to try and have a more comprehensive and less transactional relationship with the US, which would be important, and there are stumbling blocks, right? I mean, so we are not entirely seeing eye to eye on Afghanistan, even with China. I mean, Pakistan's desire
Ali,
is
if I may put a question here for you, Ali, do you think if Pakistan gives ample support to the Americans to exit and leave peacefully and unharmed, you believe that that is going to be the stepping stone for another level of engagement between the two countries? Or you believe that we'll remain strictly transactional, that, a pawn for a pawn and a bishop for a bishop?
Well, I think that we also have to, like I'm saying, that, we shouldn't only focus on one thing at a time, which is like trying to come up with a power sharing formula and let the Americans exit, because this is the window of opportunity to talk about, let's see an ROZ coming in at the same time, which can be implemented with any power sharing formula that comes into place. I mean, this is also the time to be discussing sort of, India. This is also the time. This is the time because, once there's a physical American exit from Afghanistan, we will have less leverage. I mean, we've already seen to the climate summit, Pakistan was not given a full chair. I mean, the PM's advisor on climate came in on one of the side sessions, but we were not formally invited to the climate mood. Right, so there are a lot of issues, trust issues between the US and Pakistan, but we need to be proactive, right? So rather than trying to give assurances on such a chaotic situation, we need to try and put in place those enabling conditions, right? I mean, everyone acknowledges that water is going to become the next thorn in the side. What have we done on our side to try and, put in place arrangements that whoever comes to power, something will be sorted out and there will be international support for it. So, I mean, I think a lot of the initiative needs to come from within Pakistan. as well. We need to be more proactive and have the short-term goals and the long-term goals in sight and negotiate both at the same time while we have the chance, while we have an audience.
Obviously, you need to have a lot of consistency in your foreign policy also. But anyway, Sayyid Mohammad Ali, thank you so much for your presence. Jen Lodi, it was a pleasure to have you, sir. And thank you so much, Dr. Nazir, for your presence as well. And that's all we have for this hour. I'll see you, inshallah, at 8 tomorrow. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz.